My parents are forcing me to give my money to my sister for her business. But when she sends me photos of her grand opening to mock me, I do something terrible that leaves her with nothing. I'm 17 years old and was forced to give the money I inherited from my grandmother a few months ago to my older sister so she could finance her business dreams. My sister Connie is 6 years older than me and has always bullied me. She seems to have something against me for no apparent reason. The truth is, she intimidates me because she can. She knows she'll always get her way, just like when we were kids. My parents always told me not to make a big deal out of things, and when I complained about Connie and how she treated me, they said I was being too sensitive. Now I realize that my parents manipulated me into believing that it was normal sibling behavior and that I had no reason to be upset. But I can assure you, Connie was far worse than other older siblings. She wasn't just playing around, and what she did wasn't harmless. Since we were little, she's always tried to humiliate me with cruel words, and my parents would tell me to be quiet, but they never said anything to her, even though she was the one who made me cry. That was horrible in itself, but at least it was only verbal. However, this particular incident when I was 13 made me realize that she didn't just dislike me, she truly hated me. So, my family and I had gone to the beach, and Connie had brought a couple of her friends along. She was 19 at the time, having come back from college for the weekend. So she and her friends spent all their time together. Things had been particularly unpleasant for me, because for some reason, her friends seemed to hate me as much as she did. I guess they all suffer from the same kind of mental disorder that makes them hate people who've done absolutely nothing to them. Anyway, they constantly belittled me, made hurtful comments about me, and laughed every time I was around. I got tired of it, so I decided to walk away from them and sat alone on the pier with my feet dangling over the water. Suddenly, I felt a plastic bag placed over my head, and someone pushed me from behind, causing me to fall into the water. It took me a couple of minutes to regain my senses and figure out what was happening, and then I saw my sister and her friends running and laughing as I splashed in the water. Fortunately, I'm a good swimmer, and as soon as I composed myself, I took the bag off my head and swam back to shore as fast as I could. It was the most traumatic incident I've ever experienced, and when I returned to my parents crying about what had happened, my sister and her friends tried to downplay it, saying it was just a harmless joke. But the worst part was yet to come. My parents actually laughed with them and said I was overreacting as always, because I'd always been a crybaby. They said nothing would have happened to me, and my dad even made a joke about how at least all those swimming lessons had finally paid off. The plastic bag they put over my head was pretty small, and I could have suffocated and died if I hadn't managed to react in time and take it off my head. I could have drowned. So many things could have gone wrong, yet they found it all so amusing. I already knew my parents had a favorite child, and it definitely wasn't me, but that incident stayed with me. Since then, I decided that I wasn't going to treat any of these people as my family. My only goal was to study hard, get into college, and then get away from these people because I couldn't afford to trust any of them. Since then, I've always kept my distance from Connie. But unfortunately, I'm forced to live with my parents, so I can't treat them the same way. I've had to act nice to them, which is also part of the reason I had to give up the money I inherited 3 months ago. Even though I really didn't want to, my grandmother, who was my dad's mother, passed away about a year ago, and we finally received the inheritance 3 months ago. She left the house she used to live in and most of the money to my parents, while Connie and I received $5,000 each. But I also got a sapphire ring she owned because I once told her I really liked it, and she joked that I could have it once she was gone. It was a pretty big sum, and I was planning to save it for my future. But then my parents told me that Connie was starting her own business, so she needed to gather all the money she could. They were already helping her and now expected me to do the same. I didn't think it was fair because it was her business. Why should I contribute? I also shouldn't forget that she's always treated me with nothing but cruelty my entire life. And suddenly I was expected to help this person. I refused, but after arguing with me for a couple of days, my dad told me that if I didn't help her, he wouldn't pay for my college tuition and wouldn't even allow me to come home once I left. That really scared me, and I was already very frustrated with the situation, so I ended up saying yes. It probably wasn't a good decision, but I was under a lot of pressure and simply didn't think it was worth continuing to fight with these people because my final exams were coming up, and I also had to study. I needed peace and quiet, so just to shut my parents up, I agreed to give up the inheritance I had received. After all, they let me keep my ring, probably because they didn't know it was a real sapphire. In the will, My grandmother only referred to it as the ring with the blue stone, so I knew what she was talking about. And I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut, knowing it was worth a lot, which turned out to be good for me. So, I gave up the $5,000 I had received from my grandmother and ended that discussion. 3 months have passed since then, and I have been accepted into the university I chose. I'm starting in a few weeks. My parents are keeping their promise. They're going to cover all my expenses, like tuition, and since I'll be living out of state, they'll also pay for all my living costs. I guess it wasn't so bad to give up my $5,000 because now I don't have to worry about money while I'm in college. Everything has been going well for me, and technically it still is, but I feel very guilty about what I did. A few days ago, my sister hosted a launch party now that she has finally managed to open her store. She's working with the same people who used to be her friends in college. You know, the girls who pushed me into the sea with a plastic bag over my head and thought it was funny. The 3 of them now own a huge shoe and accessories store. It's pretty basic, but they think they've done something revolutionary because they believe the things they've created are really cute. Anyway, they have lots of admirers who agree with everything they say, so their friends will definitely shop there. I already know that. There was a chance my sister might have had a successful career ahead, but I did something. After she sent me a bunch of pictures from the launch party just to rub it in my face, which I obviously wasn't invited to. And when my parents left, they told me the reason I wasn't invited was that it was an adults-only event, and I was 17, so they couldn't take me with them. It was nonsense, but I didn't really want to go anywhere anyway. However, the day after the party, Connie sent a bunch of pictures and a message saying how I missed the fabulous party she had thrown the day before, wanting me to experience it through the photos. And then, just to be arrogant, she said she couldn't have done it without my help, referring to the $5,000 I had to give her. I don't know why, but that really upset me. And then, when I saw this guy in the photos, I immediately went to my gallery and confirmed my suspicions from the photos themselves. I couldn't tell if he was dating anyone or not, as he was just in the background of a couple of photos. But even though he had grown some facial hair and put on some weight, I could still tell it was her ex-boyfriend from high school. This guy, let's call him Simon, started dating her as soon as she turned 18, although he himself was 25 at the time. He went to the same high school as the 2 of us, but of course, he had graduated long before Connie, and they had struck up an online friendship when she was 16. He literally asked her out on her 18th birthday, which I thought was pretty weird, but Connie thought it was romantic. Luckily, this was one occasion where my parents acted like normal human beings and told her they didn't like the idea of her dating someone who had been waiting for her to turn 18, despite being in his mid-20s like a creep. They didn't want her dating him, but I guess she didn't listen and kept seeing him in secret. He was working at his dad's company at the time, but after only 8 months together, they had to break up because he moved to live with his uncle in Wyoming and work on a farm since, apparently. His dad caught him trying to steal from the company. She was devastated, and that's when our parents found out she had still been seeing him, as he had come home to beg my dad to get him a job here, so he wouldn't have to do what his parents wanted and be sent off to Wyoming, ending things with her. But my dad didn't listen to him and forced her to block him everywhere, promising she would never speak to him again. Our house was in chaos that day. On one side, Connie was begging our parents not to make her break up with him, promising them he would be better. On the other side, my dad was yelling at her for not listening to them and getting involved with this guy who clearly didn't have good intentions, while my mom was just crying the whole time. Obviously, no one involved me in anything that day, and they told me to stay in my room and not come out. But I had heard his name mentioned enough times, so I decided to look him up on social media. When someone causes that much of a scene in your home, you don't easily forget their face. So, when I recognized his figure in the background of her photos, I immediately decided to get revenge on Connie. Because Connie and my parents didn't consider me part of the family, they had been quite open about discussing the business in front of me. So I also knew that, while my own parents didn't need much convincing, her friends' parents hadn't been so easy to persuade. Mainly, they were convincing their parents to invest in the business because finding other investors would be difficult, given that they were all so stupid and incompetent. But anyway, I knew for sure that the last person who had been hesitating about this business plan was her friend's mother, who was a single mom and was skeptical about betting so much money on a store solely dedicated to shoes and accessories. She wanted her daughter to get a job, work for a few years, gain some experience, and then come back to this so it wouldn't end up being a bad investment. But Connie and her friends were determined to make this work. Connie had been complaining a lot about this woman while she was at home, and they had finally decided they would manage with the money they had for now. Later, if their business started to take off, then her friend's mother would invest in the business. That was the deal they had agreed on, and for that, they needed to ensure that the first few months of their business were a big success, since, for now, they only had enough capital to sustain themselves for a few months. But after that, they would definitely need a second round of investment, unless, by some miracle, they managed to generate enough business to sustain themselves. But, realistically, it was unlikely that a business model would break even so soon, especially when they were so small, and the fashion market isn't easy. I knew that the last mother who was still hesitating just needed an excuse to back out of this deal, and I knew this secret could do it. So I reached out to her using a fake account and asked her to call me because I had something important to share about her daughter's business. I made sure she called me using the Facebook call feature and didn't give her my number because I wanted to remain anonymous. I had to wait a few hours, probably because she wasn't sure if it was legitimate or not, but I guess curiosity got the best of her and she eventually called me. Then, I told her everything about what I had seen and who the guy in the background of all the photos really was. At first, she didn't believe me, but then I managed to convince her that my job was only to warn her. After that, it was completely up to her whether she still wanted to invest in this business or not. Then I hung up on my own, sent her a couple of photos of Connie and Simon from the past, and let her decide. I guess she decided to back out, and she also told her daughter to do the same. From the day after I made that phone call, things have been intense. Nobody has any idea that I was behind all of this, but Connie has been calling our parents trying to convince them to talk to the mother who backed out and convince her to get back on board. Her friends are also quite angry with her because they can't believe she didn't share something like this with them. Apparently, she's back with Simon, but she had lied about his identity so no one would recognize him, and even our parents are quite upset with her because of this. In short, she's in trouble because literally everyone in her life is mad at her, and I really want to enjoy all of this, but for some reason I just can't. I know this business meant a lot to her, and now I wonder if I was a bit petty and if what I did was wrong. I overheard our parents arguing a few hours ago about how disappointed they were, and they were even angry with her and considering pulling out as investors in her business because she had betrayed their trust. This really spelled trouble for her because they almost never get mad at her, so this is something completely new. And I don't know, this doesn't make me feel as good as I thought it would. So, am I to blame for hurting my sister, trying to make a potential investor back out of her business because she bullied me as a kid? Update 1. Thanks to everyone who took the time to respond to my post with advice. I guess you're right. Maybe I had too much of a conscience to enjoy this, but I'm doing the right thing and keeping my mouth shut about what I did, because if my parents find out that I was the one behind all of this, they would literally kick me out of the house. And since I'll be turning 18 in a couple of months, there won't be anything stopping them from doing so. I'm relying on them to pay for my college expenses, so I really can't afford to let that happen. It's been a week since I made my post, and things have gotten much worse for Connie. The mother who backed out of the deal convinced her daughter to do the same, and now it's just the two of them left. But her other friend is very upset with her, and is demanding that they split the business shares 60-40, because her trust in Connie has significantly diminished after learning about this secret boyfriend who stole from his father's company. For them, she presented Simon as a guy she had met on a dating app a couple of months ago and had been with him since then. But after her friend's mother revealed the truth, she still tried to cling to that story, but no one believes her anymore. She even tried to say that the images were fake, claiming that someone could have edited them to make her look like a liar. So she's been visiting our parents almost every day, and they've been scolding her for what she did, but they're also trying to help her. Every afternoon, the three of them meet with her lawyer to try to find a way for her not to lose her shares in the business. There's a strong possibility that they'll have to shut down due to this disagreement if they don't manage to resolve this conflict quickly. I'm not sure how I'll feel about that, but honestly, I've decided to avoid thinking about this entirely. The only good thing that has come out of the situation is that since Connie is in trouble, no one is really paying attention to me. So I can come and go as I please, and I'm literally doing whatever I want. It's nice. It has really taken the focus off of me. Even when Connie visits, she just ignores me because she's too busy with her own situation, and my parents don't say anything to me either. This is how I'm spending my last few weeks at home before I leave for college, and so far, it's been great. I don't have to answer to anyone about what I'm doing during the day. Honestly, I feel like even if I don't come home for a couple of days and spend more time at my friends' houses than at my own, my parents and Connie wouldn't even notice. Like I said, this is the only good thing that's come out of this situation, and I hope they leave me alone until I'm finally ready to go to college. I'm also crossing my fingers that this situation doesn't in any way affect my parents' decision to pay for my college expenses, something I hadn't considered before. But as I write this post, I realize if it does, I'll be in trouble. At least I'll have the satisfaction of knowing that Connie is having a worse time than I am. Update 2. It's been almost 2 weeks since my original post, and until last week, nothing really happened related to me, so I thought I was safe. But now I don't think so anymore. Anyway, a couple of days ago, I guess the woman I called finally gave in to the pressure and told Connie how exactly she found out about this past connection. She didn't tell her the whole truth, but she simply told Connie that she received an anonymous phone call and a couple of photos from someone, and that's how she found out. With her not bothering to hide the fact that she knew and had been with him and didn't really end her relationship. Because at this point, no one is really stupid, and everyone has figured out that she didn't meet him on any dating app and the photos were real. After finding out that there was an anonymous phone call involved, she obviously thought of me first. So yesterday, when she came to visit, I had the misfortune of being downstairs because I had made plans to go out with a friend, and I was leaving. But then, she barged into the house and pushed me as hard as she could as soon as she saw me. I lost my balance and my temper, and I pushed her back. Then she grabbed me by the hair and started screaming in my face, saying that she knew I was the one who made that phone call and that she would make sure I paid the price for doing this. I was panicking, but I couldn't let it show. Otherwise, she might have figured out the truth, and I wanted to hold on to the fact that it wasn't me. So I started screaming back at her and said it wasn't me and I wouldn't even know who to talk to because I had only met her friend's parents once when they all came over for lunch a couple of weeks before the store opened. Of course, I lied blatantly, but I tried to make it sound as believable as possible. After a few seconds of us yelling at each other, our parents intervened and finally separated us. But then Connie said she didn't believe a word I was saying and was sure it was me who had ruined her chances of having a career in business and demanded that I let her and my parents check my phone and laptop. I was mentally prepared because I knew this was going to happen, but I still put up a big objection because if I didn't, it would look suspicious. Anyway, I had nothing to worry about because I had wiped all my devices of any evidence that could point to me as the person who made that anonymous phone call. Plus, Connie thought I had made a call from my phone number and not from a Facebook account I had created specifically to contact her friend's mother and then deleted, so she was completely wrong from the start. Even when she and my parents checked all my accounts on different social media platforms, they found nothing. When she found no proof to support her claims that I was the one who told her friends about her past with Simon, she completely lost it and started screaming at me, saying that I had wiped all my devices on purpose and that she knew it was me. I argued back, saying that she had lost her mind just because she was going to lose her business, but that she had no right to take it out on me. Eventually, things calmed down a bit, and she started crying. I thought I was in the clear, but that's when my parents decided to talk to me and said that while they couldn't find anything to prove that I was the one who leaked this information, they still believed Connie because she seemed pretty certain. Also, there was no one else who could know this. Even though they were at the party and saw Simon, they didn't recognize him, so it literally couldn't have been them. So that left only me because Connie sent those pictures with Simon in the background to annoy me, and it was very obvious I could have retaliated. And then exactly what I feared would happen ended up happening. They told me that even though they couldn't find any proof, they knew it was me and were canceling their plan to pay for my college expenses. So now I was on my own, and they didn't want to hear any more arguments about it. Then it was my turn to start yelling and crying, but unfortunately, no one cared because I wasn't Connie. After about half an hour of begging, yelling, and lots of tears with no response from them, I finally went back to my room, locked myself in, and started writing this update to distract myself. I still have the sapphire ring my grandmother left me and I could sell it, but I'm not sure if it will be enough for 3 years of college. So I'm considering taking out a student loan and asking someone in my family to co-sign because, as I said, there are only a few weeks left before the deadline to make the payment, and I can't risk it at all. Even if I can cover the first semester by selling the ring, I'm unsure about the rest, and eventually, I'll have to figure something out. Update 3. A lot has happened since my last update. It's been a month since I posted, so let me start by talking about what happened to me. A couple of days after my last update, I left my parents' house because they were no longer paying for my tuition. I packed my things and went to live with a friend. We had discussed this before, and she and her family welcomed me with open arms. She was taking a gap year, and after a few days, she and her parents offered to use the college fund they had for her to pay the first tuition fees since she had decided not to go to college yet. Initially, I tried to refuse, but they insisted because they've known me for a long time and treated me like their own daughter. Given my situation, I accepted their generous offer. Although they don't expect me to pay them back, I'm determined to return the money. I'm currently on campus and didn't have to sell my grandmother's ring, so I'm incredibly grateful. As for Connie, things didn't end well for her. She ended up selling all the shares in the business, and now her friends fully own the store. She had to take her losses and leave because it became clear that no one could trust her anymore. Unfortunately, my parents couldn't do anything about it because it was completely out of their control. She's probably upset because the whole idea was hers in the first place. But I guess she should be relieved because I don't think the store will be successful in the future anyway. Anyway, that's no longer my business because I'm no longer in contact with them. Now I'm just going to focus on my future. Update 4. Months after my last update, I have to say that things have gone pretty well for me. I'm studying and even got a job, which allows me to pay for my education. That's good because my friend's parents only paid the first few fees, but now I'll be responsible for the rest. And I'm also going to repay the money they lent me. I can say that life at college is pretty good, especially because I can be away from home and my parents, whom I've completely blocked from my life, as well as my sister. I did this a few weeks ago when I heard from them again when they called me. They reached out to say they knew I had a sapphire ring. Apparently, someone found this post and showed it to them, so now they know its value. They wanted me to give it to them because they thought they could sell it and get back the money they had put into the business, which they lost because of me. However, I laughed over the phone and told them I wasn't going to do anything like that I didn't even have to do anything like that because I no longer had to live with them or rely on them to pay for my education, so I was on my own. Then I hung up the phone and blocked them from everything. It felt so good to tell them that, like a weight lifted off my shoulders after so many years. I'm not sure if I'll leave these posts up or end up deleting them because I don't want them to read more about me. Maybe I'll even create a new Reddit account to talk about other things, but so my parents and sister can't follow me. At least I'll leave this up for a few days so you all can read it.